What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have a DXM trip report for you. The title of this trip report is Cigarettes Made Out of Pebbles, and was submitted to Erowid in 2023 by the user Pretzel Pete. Special shout out to my longtime subscriber, Jonathan Caulfield, otherwise known as Floyd Lover. This one's for you, brother. This was one of the more recent and actually the highest rated of all the glowing DXM experience reports that I could find in the current Erowid vault. So I hope you like it. But with all that being said, let our story begin. 240 milliliters DXM dry cough forte, equal to 11.8 milligrams per kilogram. I dosed at 7:30 p.m., knowing it would be dark in an hour so that the peak would be in darkness. I chose to trip it home, and as usual, with no lighting, and would be navigating around the house by feeling the walls once things kicked in. So I did 240 milliliters of dry cough forte in a set of 12 20 milliliter shots, back to back, and I was ready to roll. I would then spend the come-up period preparing the main trip room for a complete blackout. It's a square room with my computer in it on a standing desk, speakers, a shag rug in the center, and a pillow. So as I was coming up, I was draping towels over the computer lights and keyboard, etc. And I even have a Robitussin brand blanket, which is a black and white zigzag pattern. This was 30 minutes in, and the pattern was beginning to vibrate as I put it over the monitor. I had the music all set up, which was a bunch of Mr. Black remixes from SoundCloud, and was kind of feeling it. The nausea begins to kick in my stomach a bit. A slight increase in body temperature occurs, so I change into lighter clothing. I was dancing to the tunes as the rush was kicking, and made a last-minute change as I wasn't quite vibing with the mixes. So I loaded up 8 different Keiritsu mixes, and, as the first one begun, the transition from coming up to what I would describe as peak effects begins. I had to lay down on my back with the pillow, and the dissociation begins as a dark grin covers my face. The distance of the music source began to push further and further away, while simultaneously becoming more encompassing. The bass is especially pronounced, and lying on the floor makes every vibration felt. My arms were by my side with palms facing up, and their location and sensation too began to push and stretch further and further away, to which felt like kilometers, while the sensation of the rest of my body remains stationary. I close my eyes, and a beautiful vision of a dark underwater scene is present, with these floral-like clusters of corals which resemble mushrooms, with their overall shape being jellyfish-like. They were lilac and white, with a dim shimmering luminescence, and were utterly gorgeous, and began to ascend to the surface of the water. This vision then subsided, and I opened my eyes again. The incredible sensations of profoundness hit me to a degree where I was on the verge of orgasm. This was a sustained sensation and very enjoyable. This was where it felt as if I contacted spiritual beings, and beings representing Mother Nature, and began to see the interconnectedness of the collective unconscious. I was being guided by these spiritual beings and was seeing people in their spiritual form, which sort of resembled red tadpoles, and were multiplying and disappearing in a display of life and death, all connecting like neural connections in the brain. I got a grander sense and realization that the difference in race and culture doesn't matter, and that we are all connected as one spiritually in a way that is not visible, the way objects and events are connected in the real world. It was overall a profound experience, like I was accepted with open arms into the spiritual world. I cried slightly with happiness. Then the image of a previous workplace I worked at came up, and I worked with a very toxic and a truly narcissistic bunch of people that caused a lot of damage to me. The spiritual being wanted me to live out the painful memories again in order to heal. So I did so with a heightened sense of anguish, and as the scene finished, it then felt almost like I was surrounded with white light and saw myself levitate upwards from the third person, and the past damage seemed healed in an instant. Now this was only an hour in, as the first Keiritsu mix had finished, and I was still in the peak of the trip. I decided to have a cigarette. I had given up for 2 years and unfortunately started again recently, and I was also planning to use this trip to quit. I had 2 cigarettes left aside for the trip, which were on the kitchen counter. I crawled like a toddler through the long hallway leading to the kitchen and navigated to the cigarette on the counter. There is a skylight in the kitchen, so it was not completely dark like the rest of the house, as moonlight was casting a subtle blue light through the kitchen. I lay on my back, and again the thought occurred to me that I would be dancing with the dragon that is nicotine. I light up the cigarette and inhale, and instantly my brain lights up, and as I look at the ceiling, instantaneously a wash of black and white square-based detailed geometry covers the ceiling. I exhale, and the geometry disappears. I inhale again, and a new set of reddish geometry engulfs the ceiling, and the presence of a dragon like being floating through the air is felt, and the feeling of the spiritual being saying, "You are dancing with the dragons. I hope you enjoy it. This consumption will only be for ritualized purposes now." I finish the cigarette and navigate back to the main trip room. I sit kneeling, upright on the rug with my eyes open. I fell into what I would definitely call a hole or a void. The space of the void was cubic in size, with spherical edges, and completely black with slight areas of illuminated light to present form. I look down and see dully lit, however, illuminated geometry, which is dark green, indented with clean holes into a larger geometrical torus-like shape, but had a slight resemblance of trypophobia, minus the revulsion. Then I start to lose orientation of my body. I am looking down at my body from the third person, severely dissociated at this point, and I am wearing this shiny black suit with neon white spotted patterns that then extend downwards to infinity. The scene pans up, and now my body is upside down on the roof, and I say to myself, "But wait, I'm up here now?" And simultaneously, the direction of gravity rotates to a 45-degree angle, then 180 to align with my body on the roof. And also at the same time, the source of the music is moving to different spaces in the cubic room, being heard on the left wall, then the roof, and then the right. I lose all sensation and presence and sight of my body completely, except for my hands, which are grabbing onto the rug, kind of like a cat scratching on carpet. I can only feel my hands. No idea where I am, which way is up, where the music is coming from, and what orientation gravity is. It was utterly confusing and disorientating. The void all of a sudden centers itself back into black, and I am reorientated correctly, and a silver swath of a trim sheet. In video games, a trim sheet is basically a sheet with different textures, and panels, details, beveled edges used for texturing, starts to move towards me out of the blackness, almost in an ominous fashion, then receding back again. I see a small cluster of green video game assets that I had made, sitting motionless in the corner. Neon lights appear and disappear, and the general headspace of the void is very arcade and video game-like, as the gravity changes sort of felt like Pong. This part lasted about an hour, and I decide to finish the last cigarette. I start to navigate down the hallway to the kitchen, eyes still open, walking this time and running my hands along the wall for guidance. All the while, the hallway turns into an Art Deco city scene, like the hallway floor was a road and the walls were the buildings. I make it to the kitchen and approach the counter where the last cigarette is. The kitchen counter is made out of some sort of decorative stone, similar to marble. As I go to grab the cigarette, the whole kitchen counter, its cupboard doors, the wall behind it, and the cigarette itself gets covered in tiny white pebbles the size of sesame seeds. It was full on. Then I look down towards my hands, and my arms start to get covered with these sesame-sized pebbles. I look around the kitchen, and instantaneously an overlay of cobblestone, which was highly disorganized and damaged, covers the whole floor and counter in a sporadic-like way. I immediately sit down on the floor, as this was getting pretty damn full on, and look at my hands and my arms again. The sensation was exactly like looking down at my hands while playing a game in VR. The smaller sesame seed pebbles appear and disappear, and then the veins and muscles on my arms start to morph and breathe in and out, like it was expanding and contracting. I look away, all the while the kitchen is still covered in this disorganized cobblestone, which now started to look like blood splatters, but like from a retro first-person shooter. It engulfs more space across the kitchen. I look back down at my hands, and now realistic wounds start appearing on my fingers and palms, and then disappear. Then splits and incisions in my fingers morph in and out and breathe. The same thing occurs on my other hand at the same time. I was looking down at the wounds on my hands appearing, and was kind of like, wow, that's kind of freaky and cool. I lie on my back again. The pebbles had disappeared from the cigarette, but now it felt really thick in my hand, like I was holding a flare. I wasn't too sure which way it was, so I flicked the lighter, which was the feeling of immediately sucking me out of the Dextro universe, but giving the whole room this unusual pale yellow hue. I turn the ciggy the correct way and light it and lie on my back. A repeat of the events from the first cigarette occurs as I smoke the second. I return to the trip room, but as I pass the toilet and bathroom, they appeared quite royal with Art Deco stylings. The toilet walls in particular was made up of these lush green jade tiles. As I look into the bathroom, it felt as if my neck stretched right up, and I was surveying the newly stylized bathroom from an aerial view. It then felt like my neck receded back to its correct length. I enter the trip room and lie on my side and start to see a metal strip of decorative architecture, again in an Art Deco style, which starts to run repetitiously, as if looking top down at a conveyor belt in motion. The sensation of my body then starts to expand and expand, to the point where it felt like it was the size of a planet. However, my arms did not expand and come along for the ride, and remain their standard size. Things did get a bit choppy after here. There was a moment where I left the trip room and lost complete orientation as the hallway was being blocked by newly formed architecture, and the gravity orientation was fucking with me at times too. My cat, which is black and white, appeared at one point and was instead all silver. I patted my newly silverized cat confusingly. Things appeared to subside in intensity, so I decided to go to bed. This was around 2 a.m., but I began reflecting on the trip. Got up at one point and realized I am still very much tripping, and decided to play around with some glow sticks and danced away in the main trip room, but ultimately was exhausted by it all after an hour. I then went back to bed around 3 a.m. feeling drained, mentally depleted, and ended up falling asleep around 9 a.m. It was somewhat grueling by that time. I am always impressed by how gentle DXM transitions me back downwards. In comparison, I've had MDMA that has dropped me from a total euphoria to complete shit in an instant, like getting kicked out of a moving car. Overall, this was the furthest out I had ever been on DXM. A highly enjoyable, profound, sometimes painful, and at times utterly confusing trip, with the video game motifs throughout the day playing a major role in the feel of the trip. I am glad I went through the experience.